One evening, the Carter family seemed to have everything money could buy. Their company was valued in the billions. Their mansion overlooked the ocean, and another celebration marked what the world believed was yet another year of unstoppable success. By sunrise, that empire had collapsed. Their accounts were frozen. Investigators surrounded their headquarters. Employees walked out carrying boxes, and the family that once dominated magazine covers disappeared from public view almost overnight. The question wasn't simply how they lost everything. It was why it all happened so suddenly, and who had quietly set the collapse in motion long before anyone realized the danger was real. This story is inspired by real patterns seen in several major corporate collapses and financial scandals that shook the business world, with names and identifying details changed for storytelling. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Stay with us, because the final discovery changed everything investigators thought they knew, and revealed that the greatest threat to the Carter family's empire may have been sitting at their own table all along. Long before the Carter family became a symbol of extraordinary wealth, they were known for something far more ordinary. Decades earlier, Richard Carter grew up in a working-class neighborhood where every dollar mattered, taking odd jobs after school and dreaming of building a company that would change his family's future forever. Alongside his wife, Eleanor Carter, he slowly transformed a small manufacturing business into a multinational corporation that expanded across North America, Europe, and Asia. Their story became the definition of the American dream. Business magazines celebrated Richard as a visionary leader whose determination inspired a generation of entrepreneurs, while Eleanor earned praise for leading charitable foundations that funded hospitals, scholarships, and disaster relief programs across the country. Their children, Michael Carter and Olivia Carter, appeared to represent the next generation of responsible leadership, attending international conferences, speaking about innovation, and standing beside world leaders during charity galas and economic summits. The family's private jet became a familiar sight at major business events. Their collection of luxury cars filled magazine features, and their private island hosted exclusive gatherings attended by celebrities, politicians, and influential investors. To millions watching from the outside, the Carters seemed to have built more than a fortune. They had created a legacy that looked impossible to break. Employees proudly spent entire careers inside Carter Industries. Investors competed for opportunities to own even a small piece of the company, and financial analysts described the family as one of the safest names in global business. Every public appearance reinforced the same image of confidence, unity, and success, making it difficult to imagine that anything could threaten the empire they had spent decades building. Yet while the cameras captured smiles, applause, and celebration, a different story was quietly beginning to unfold. Decisions made behind closed boardroom doors, conversations that never reached the public, and pressures hidden beneath years of remarkable success were slowly changing the future of the Carter family. To everyone else, they still looked untouchable. Their empire appeared stronger than ever, and few people questioned whether the foundation beneath it remained as solid as it seemed. But behind every smiling family photograph, cracks had already begun to appear. The first warning signs were so small that almost everyone ignored them. A respected senior executive at Carter Industries unexpectedly announced his resignation after more than 20 years with the company, offering no clear explanation beyond a brief statement thanking the Carter family for the opportunity. Within weeks, two more executives quietly left, each departure raising questions that the company dismissed as routine leadership changes. At the same time, confidential meetings between Richard Carter, Eleanor Carter, Michael Carter, and a small group of legal advisors became increasingly frequent, often lasting late into the night with no official explanation. Outside auditors, who had once completed their reviews without concern, suddenly requested additional financial records, unusual transaction reports, and explanations for a series of complex international transfers. Their questions were met with confident assurances, yet the requests continued to grow. Investors who had trusted Carter Industries for years began noticing subtle changes in quarterly reports. And although the company continued to report strong performance, a quiet sense of uncertainty spread through financial circles. Online forums and business journalists started discussing rumors of hidden debt, unexplained acquisitions, and disagreements inside the company's leadership. Most people dismissed the speculation as jealousy aimed at one of America's most successful families, but the conversations refused to disappear. Inside the Carter household, tensions that had once remained private became harder to conceal. Richard believed the company should stay on its traditional path, while Michael pushed for aggressive expansion into risky new markets. Eleanor urged caution, worried that protecting the family's reputation mattered just as much as chasing larger profits. And Olivia found herself caught between loyalty to her family and concerns about decisions she didn't fully understand. Then anonymous emails began arriving at regulatory offices and major news organizations. The messages claimed that serious financial irregularities were being hidden from investors and hinted that someone inside Carter Industries possessed documents capable of exposing everything. No one could confirm whether the emails were genuine, part of a campaign to damage the company, or the work of someone seeking revenge. Three possibilities quickly emerged. Perhaps a rival corporation was orchestrating an elaborate act of corporate sabotage. Perhaps someone within the Carter family's inner circle had decided to betray them. Or perhaps years of ambitious decisions had created a financial mistake so enormous that no one knew how to stop it. Each theory seemed possible, yet none fully explained what was happening. As uncertainty spread through boardrooms, newsrooms, and financial markets, the Carter family struggled to determine who they could still trust. Then came the phone call that nobody in the family ever expected. The evening began exactly as the Carter family had planned. Inside their oceanfront mansion, Richard Carter welcomed senior executives, longtime investors, and close business partners to an elegant dinner celebrating what appeared to be another outstanding quarter for Carter Industries. Glasses were raised in celebration as Richard thanked everyone for their loyalty, while Eleanor Carter spoke proudly about the company's charitable projects and the thousands of families whose livelihoods depended on their success. Michael Carter confidently discussed future expansion plans. Olivia Carter laughed with guests as photographers captured another picture-perfect family moment, and every conversation reinforced the belief that the Carter empire remained stronger than ever. Across the country, employees finished their shifts believing they worked for one of the most stable companies in America, completely unaware that events unfolding behind computer screens in distant financial institutions were about to change everything. Shortly after the dinner ended, the first warning arrived. Richard's phone lit up with an urgent call from the company's chief financial officer, who spoke only a few words before asking for an immediate private meeting. Within minutes, more calls followed. Senior banking officials reported that several large transactions had been flagged for review and temporarily frozen. At first, everyone assumed it was a technical error that would soon be resolved, but the situation escalated with astonishing speed. Trading activity surrounding Carter Industries intensified as rumors spread across financial markets, sending the company's share price into a rapid decline. Every passing minute erased billions in market value. Richard ordered an emergency board meeting at company headquarters while Michael contacted financial advisors across multiple time zones searching for answers. Eleanor attempted to reassure worried family members, but even she could sense that something far beyond an ordinary business setback was unfolding. Lawyers began arriving one after another, carrying briefcases filled with contracts and confidential documents. Their expressions revealed a level of concern the Carter family had never witnessed before. Telephones rang continuously as investors demanded explanations. Directors requested emergency updates, and executives struggled to verify conflicting information arriving from banks, regulators, and overseas offices. Security guards at headquarters received unusual instructions to restrict access to certain floors and deny entry to anyone without direct authorization from senior management. No one explained why, but whispers quickly spread through the building that investigators might already be preparing to intervene. Long before sunrise, the atmosphere inside Carter Industries had transformed from confidence into panic. Then came the morning that would be remembered around the world. Breaking news interrupted regular television programming as national networks reported that Carter Industries was facing an unprecedented financial crisis. Investors rushed to sell their remaining shares. Financial experts debated what had triggered the collapse, and anxious employees flooded company headquarters, hoping someone could tell them whether they still had jobs. Outside the building, police vehicles arrived as journalists crowded behind security barriers, broadcasting every new development live. The Carter family watched their carefully built reputation collapse in real time, powerless to stop the storm that was consuming everything they had spent decades creating. Yet as investigators secured financial records and began examining the company's operations, they uncovered signs suggesting that the collapse of the Carter fortune was only the beginning. The financial disaster dominating headlines was hiding an even more disturbing mystery, and investigators quickly realized that the family's biggest problem had nothing to do with money at all. As federal investigators entered the headquarters of Carter Industries, they expected to uncover the cause of a financial collapse. Instead, they found themselves facing a puzzle that grew more complicated with every hour. Teams of forensic accountants secured computers, collected boxes of company files, and began tracing transactions that stretched across multiple countries. Almost immediately, they noticed gaps where important financial records should have been. Entire files referenced in previous audits could no longer be located, while several digital folders appear to have been removed only days before the company's downfall. Investigators then discovered a network of offshore companies connected to Carter Industries through layers of complex ownership structures. Some appear to have legitimate business purposes, while others seem to exist only on paper. Large transfers of money had moved through these accounts over several years, often passing through multiple jurisdictions before returning to companies linked to the Carter business empire. Determining whether these transactions were lawful business operations or something designed to hide the true movement of money became one of the investigation's biggest challenges. The deeper authorities looked, the more questions they uncovered. Company email servers revealed that hundreds of messages exchanged between senior executives had been permanently deleted shortly before the collapse. Although digital specialists managed to recover fragments of several conversations, many critical exchanges remained incomplete, leaving investigators to wonder what information had disappeared forever. At the same time, anonymous witnesses began contacting investigators with conflicting accounts. Some claimed they had warned senior management about questionable financial practices months earlier. Others insisted the Carter family had been deliberately misled by trusted advisors who concealed serious problems until it was too late. As these interviews continued, several former executives who had resigned only weeks before the collapse became increasingly difficult to locate. Some declined interview requests through their attorneys, while others appeared to have left the country entirely, fueling even more speculation. Each new testimony seemed to contradict the last. One witness defended Richard Carter as an honest businessman who had spent decades building his company with integrity. Another claimed Michael Carter had approved risky financial strategies despite repeated warnings. Still another insisted Eleanor Carter had pushed for greater transparency but had been ignored. Olivia Carter maintained that she had never been involved in the company's financial decisions, yet investigators continued asking detailed questions about meetings she attended during the months leading up to the collapse. Outside the investigation, the story dominated headlines around the world. News channels broadcast non-stop coverage, financial analysts debated every new development, and social media turned the Carter family into the center of a fierce public argument. One side believed the family had become victims of an elaborate scheme orchestrated by people they trusted, pointing to years of charitable work and a reputation built over decades. The other side argued that fortunes of this size could not disappear without deliberate decisions made at the highest level, insisting the Carters had carefully planned every step before everything fell apart. Every new report deepened the divide, and every unanswered question added another layer of uncertainty. Just when investigators believed they were beginning to understand what had happened, they uncovered a confidential document hidden among archived legal files, a document that should never have existed. The confidential document immediately changed the direction of the investigation. It was not a contract, a bank statement, or a routine corporate report. Instead, it pointed to the existence of someone inside the Carter family's trusted circle who had quietly gathered evidence for months before the empire collapsed. As investigators compared the document with recovered emails and financial records, they realized that sensitive information had been preserved long before authorities ever arrived at Carter Industries. Whoever this person was had carefully recorded private boardroom discussions, copied confidential emails, and stored financial documents that many believed had been permanently destroyed. Even more surprising, investigators uncovered evidence suggesting this individual had met with federal authorities on multiple occasions in complete secrecy. The meetings had taken place months before the Carter family's downfall became public, raising a troubling question. Had someone been trying to expose wrongdoing, or had they been carefully building a case against the family from within? Richard Carter struggled to believe that anyone who had shared decades of loyalty could have been living a double life. Eleanor Carter questioned whether someone they had treated like family had quietly turned against them. Michael Carter became convinced that one of the senior executives who resigned shortly before the collapse had orchestrated everything, while Olivia Carter feared the betrayal might reach much closer to home than anyone wanted to admit. Investigators refused to identify their confidential source, but speculation quickly spread. Was it a trusted executive who had lost faith in the company's leadership? Was it a member of the Carter family who believed the truth had to be revealed before the damage became even greater? Could it have been the family's longtime personal lawyer, someone with access to every major decision and every confidential agreement? Or was it a lifelong friend who had witnessed years of private conversations and decided they could no longer remain silent? With every passing day, trust inside the Carter family disappeared. Conversations that once ended with reassurance now ended in accusations. Richard questioned why certain financial decisions had never been brought to his attention. Michael defended his strategy while insisting he had relied on information provided by others. Eleanor challenged both men, arguing that pride had prevented them from recognizing the warning signs when there was still time to act. Olivia found herself caught between protecting her family and confronting the possibility that someone she loved had been hiding the truth for years. Lawyers advised them to speak as little as possible, yet every interview, every legal meeting, and every headline seemed to push them further apart. Relationships that had survived decades of business challenges began falling apart under the weight of suspicion. The Carter family no longer faced only investigators and public scrutiny. They were beginning to fear one another. Yet even as accusations filled private rooms and investigators continued assembling the pieces of the case, they remained unaware that the greatest act of betrayal had not yet been uncovered. The evidence they had seen so far was only part of a much larger story, and the biggest betrayal was still hidden. Months into the investigation, the evidence finally revealed a truth far more complicated than anyone had imagined. There was no single moment that destroyed the Carter family empire, no lone decision that caused billions of dollars to disappear overnight, and no single person who could shoulder all the blame. Instead, investigators concluded that the collapse had been years in the making. As Carter Industries expanded across continents, the company had taken on increasingly complex financial obligations that depended on constant growth and unwavering investor confidence. Profits from one division were often used to support ambitious projects in another, while large acquisitions created obligations that became more difficult to manage each year. None of these decisions appeared catastrophic on their own, but together they formed a chain of hidden financial risks that left the company vulnerable when market conditions changed. Internal reports recovered during the investigation showed repeated warnings about rising debt levels and growing exposure to economic downturns. Some executives argued for slowing expansion and reducing risk, while others believed retreating would damage investor confidence and signal weakness. Richard Carter remained convinced the company could overcome temporary setbacks through experience and determination. Michael Carter pushed for larger investments, believing bold action was the only way to remain ahead of competitors. Eleanor Carter continued urging greater transparency, worried that protecting the family's reputation had become just as important as protecting the business itself. Olivia Carter watched disagreements become increasingly personal as trust between family members slowly eroded. By the time outside pressure intensified, years of internal conflict had already weakened the unity that once defined the Carter family. Investigators also found that maintaining the public image of endless success had become a burden in its own right. Every magazine cover, charity gala, shareholder presentation, and televised interview reinforced the expectation that the Carter empire could never falter. Admitting setbacks became more difficult with every passing year, and difficult conversations were often delayed in the hope that future success would solve present problems. That pressure affected not only business decisions, but personal relationships as well. When the company finally collapsed, the consequences reached far beyond balance sheets and boardrooms. The Carter family was forced to leave properties that had symbolized decades of achievement, with several luxury homes quietly sold to satisfy creditors and legal obligations. Family members found themselves living separate lives as legal proceedings and emotional wounds pushed them further apart. Thousands of loyal employees suddenly faced uncertain futures, many losing careers they had spent decades building. Friends who had once filled the family's private celebrations disappeared almost overnight, while former business partners distanced themselves from the name that had once opened every door. For Richard Carter, the greatest loss was not measured in dollars, but in the realization that the legacy he had devoted his life to building had become inseparable from public failure. Eleanor Carter watched years of charitable work become overshadowed by scandal, while Michael and Olivia struggled to rebuild lives no longer protected by wealth or influence. The Carter name, once associated with opportunity and success, became a symbol of caution discussed in business schools and financial news programs alike. It seemed that every question had finally been answered and every hidden truth brought into the light. Yet just when everyone believed the story was over, investigators uncovered one final discovery that shocked even the people who thought they knew the entire case. The final chapter of the Carter family's story unfolded inside a quiet records archive, where investigators revisited evidence that had already been examined countless times. Hidden among thousands of financial files was a confidential agreement linked to a little-known holding company that had escaped attention during the early stages of the investigation. The agreement revealed the existence of a secret financial account established years before the collapse, not to hide billions of dollars from the public as many had assumed, but to serve as an emergency reserve intended to protect the company during an unexpected crisis. What shocked investigators was not the account itself, but the fact that only a handful of people knew it existed. Before it could ever be used, disagreements within the company's leadership, legal restrictions, and rapidly escalating events made access impossible. At nearly the same time, an overlooked witness came forward with information that changed the public's understanding of the case. The witness described repeated meetings where Richard Carter argued for slowing the company's expansion, while others insisted the risks were necessary to protect investor confidence. Investigators also recovered a confidential recording confirming that senior advisors had privately warned the family about rising debt and weakening cash flow long before the collapse became public. The warnings had not been ignored entirely, but every proposed solution came too late to reverse years of mounting pressure. The evidence made one thing clear. The Carter family's downfall could not be explained by a single act of greed, one betrayal, or one catastrophic mistake. It was the result of countless decisions, growing pressure, misplaced confidence, and relationships that slowly fractured under the weight of expectations. Even after years of investigation, some questions remained unanswered, leaving historians, financial experts, and the public to debate what might have happened if different choices had been made at the right moment. Sometimes fortunes are not destroyed overnight. Sometimes the collapse begins years earlier, hidden beneath success, wealth, and carefully crafted appearances. And if you had been standing outside the Carter mansion during its brightest days, would you have noticed the warning signs before everything came crashing down? If you had seen those warning signs, would you have recognized them? As the lights faded inside the mansion, the boardroom doors remained locked. Family photographs were quietly packed into storage, and the headlines that once celebrated the Carter family became reminders of how quickly public admiration can disappear. Money can build empires, but trust is what keeps them standing. Once trust disappears, even the greatest fortunes can vanish faster than anyone imagines. What do you think was the real cause of the Carter family's downfall? Was it greed, betrayal, dangerous decisions, or simply bad luck? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below because we genuinely love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more true stories filled with mystery, suspense, and unforgettable twists, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.